concentrated directional. It uses wave interference as part of how it's transceiving. So because it's wave interference, it's able to penetrate the water, whether it's frozen or liquid, snow or rain, so much better, because it would be pouring down butts and we were still getting decent throughput. And with HughesNet, that was never the case.
So what you're talking about is rain fade, right? And so it comes down to the frequency band, right? So in satellite, there's KU, KA, C band, X band, and then obviously there's some like IF bands in between there, right? The higher the frequency band, right, the more you're susceptible to rain delegation, right? So rain fade, snow, stuff like that. So C band, X band, those like lower bands, right? They're not affected by rain at all. But Robin is right, though. There's a lot of satellites. So it's a LEO, so low Earth orbit satellites, right? So there's a bunch of them. You're connecting to them like all at once. Also, the frequency band is not nearly up in the KA, KUs, so you're not as affected, right? So the reason the heater is on the antenna is because if snow just sits on the dish, then that actually is a problem, right? Because it's like a solid over the antennas. So. Okay.
Although feral cats and other feral animals love to sit on dishy.
I have seen those memes.
Yeah.
We have like you know what you're doing with this, Ralph, in past life.
Yeah, I actually did do this as a past life. That's why like DirecTV and satellite, or like DirecTV and Dish or whatever, they use C-band to transmit that signal. So it could be pouring rain like crazy where their teleport sites are, and it's not like your TV goes out because it's raining in Atlanta where they're sending out the TV signal. You know what I'm saying? So,
wow, you can get back to C-band.
I know how teleporting works.
we got to get you and Noah on a video about satellites.
And that's how baby satellites are made.
Yeah.
When two teleporters love each other very much.
I think it does take 9 months to get a satellite in orbit.
It takes a little longer
More
than that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
pretty expensive.
I was in the Philippines for 3 weeks, and I was expecting to see like some satellites, or at least some like Starlink somewhere, because I wasn't expecting everyone there to actually have fiber. And I was in awe. Like, the Philippines had quicker internet than I did, and I was
our internet sucks.
Yeah, US and you. Yeah, I'm like,
we invented it, and then we're like, we can't have the best version of this. It's like inventing a sandwich, and then you only eat like the most grossest sandwich out there.
So years ago, one of the classified programs I worked on, they were putting a satellite up into space, which I hope is obscure enough. And this was not a cheap satellite, like billions and billions and billions of dollars. I was in the room, everyone was excited, and it started deploying, and then it stopped. And then they retracted, and they started deploying, and it stopped. So what it was a bracket, like an L bracket, was put on backwards. That one screw up shut down like billions of dollars of like money. So,
but Space Force went and shot it with their AR-15s.
Like, hooray, hooray!
And then $3 part.
Who's responsible for that bracket? Everybody's like, I'm in security.
Everybody's scrambling.
Someone literally ran out of the room.
Talk about a resume generating event. Like, I think me shut some computers down.
Because that's the intern to check on it.
The intern to put in the brackets. Yeah.
John, why didn't you take a high quality podcasting mic with you everywhere you go?
I have one right here. Isn't that coming to
there
this
you
mic?
go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think it is actually, because you picked it up and you sounded closer.
I'm honestly shocked that you had it. I was kind of. That's pretty funny.
He tried to make a joke, and you actually called him on it.
You're like, oh, I do. This is in my carry-on now.
Is this not high quality enough for you? I like it.
He turns the camera around. There's a whole like news crew behind him.
Yes, exactly. There's three people. There's like 3 people running a teleprompter and like all this stuff.
Make
Have we
joke.
officially
Make
launched
joke.
the creepy hand yet?
No,
we haven't.
Well, let's
Are
get
No,
going.
we launched a few
This is
satellites.
pre-news banter. This is not the news.
All right.
Let's get on.
Here comes the video.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say video.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security, talking about news. Today, we're going to be talking about how artificial intelligence is better at talking to people than most penetration testers. We're going to talk about Russians trying to break into banks, AWS, how you can save costs on AWS. Logic controller Flaw raises the Specter of Stuxnet back again. If that's not clickbait, I don't know what is. And then we're going to be talking about how Meta is suing scraping for hire services that allow you to sell user data. Ooh, all kinds of
Deja vu.
Oh,
Deja vu. It's almost like we
Deja vu all over again.
how dare you?
Here we
do that?
go. But I want to jump straight into the AI can like simulate anyone's voice with only 3 seconds of audio. That's kind of impressive from an audio engineering. Like that's wow. That's
I
something.
need this for phone
else.
phishing.
I mean,
And the reason why I would like to throw this out there is for pen testing. Seriously, I mean, we were joking about it from social engineering, but we weren't joking about it for social engineering. We're totally getting to the point, like in movies, where like Mission Impossible, where they have the vocal box where it changes your voice to sound like the person. Think about social engineering engagements where you can call someone and literally sound like their boss. That's what we're getting to right now.
I feel like it's gonna. I mean, I'm just so skeptical of this kind of stuff. I feel like it's gonna choke hard on technical stuff. It's gonna be like the TIPIC connection went to the UDIP connection or something. Like it's gonna like I don't know.
Error.
Like it's not gonna or be like go to the link and then it's gonna like read out the link. Facebook.com. Like I don't know. It's gonna be. It's trust me. I've used Siri.
UDP.
Yeah, it's just
UDP.
like I'm
UDP.
so skeptical. But that being said, I'm still gonna try it. I'm still
totally gonna try it, even though, like Corey said, you might want to test it.
When are we going to need
Well,
to
think
secure the
about-
phone systems for this type
Think
of
about
stuff,
how it
right?
is now. I would say like once a month whenever somebody calls the house and they're like, hello, is John Strand there? And I'm like, yeah, this is John Strand. Hey, John, how you doing? I'm doing great. Who's this? Well, I'm really happy that you asked me that because I'm like, God damn it, I fell for it again.
John, you answer the phone when like it actually you don't know the number.
I don't have any choice.
That's your
You,
first problem.
I guess that's
employees all
true.
over the world. I don't know what the hell's-
I guess you're right. I saw there was like a TikTok somewhere where it was about the age limit of when you start answering the phone if you don't know the number. Because I don't answer the phone ever. Like if call me, leave a message, and I'll call you back. But I think, and that's like my only defense against this type of attack.
I'm literally Mo Sizlak from The Simpsons. It's like, hello, I'm looking for Mr. Freely. Initials IP. IP Freely. Where's IP Freely? And the kids and Erica are all laughing at me. The dog farts, and it's a good time.
Yeah, and then the other 50% of the time, it's some huge company being like, "Hey, John, we want to hand you a giant pile of money. Are you in?"
Usually if they did that, be like, I'm gonna have to get you in contact with the COO of Black Hills Information Security, CJ Cox. Just call him. He deals with big trades.
Sounds like you can just forward your phone to CJ. Problem
Yeah,
solved.
why is it your house phone just going
That's
to
true.
Guys, you just solved my problem of what to do with CJ. He could be my secretary.
And you can.
Wow. I just
Wait,
want
this was a
you to know
problem?
we did not come up with that.
Not
I
your
thought-
personal secretary, not just your
My
secretary.
personal
your
secretary.
personal secretary.
My own personal.
I thought we were just going
You can make-
to automate voice.
Yeah, and you can make fake voicemails. Oh man.
Oh, dude,
This
it's
voices?
it's going to be a thing. Like I think it's going to be rough for like a year, but I think within a year, social engineering engagements, we're going to script that and just have it smooth like butter.
So are you saying that we're going to need like a secret passcode when people call?
Yeah.
What is my secret passcode? They're going to be like,
Yeah.
Or imagine like your phone number is like signed by a certificate, right? So then like,
like
you only call,
you have to read
only
me off the
receive from
passcode to
signed.
talk to me.
Yeah.
My voice is no longer my passcode.
Yeah.
So,
Eric was
okay.
asking. Eric was asking, so they'll be able to impersonate your voice from an outgoing voicemail message. Yes.
In very low quality,
That.
yes. So I've actually, I want to bring this up because I've done a little bit of pen testing on like voice biometric systems. Like voice printing is actually a thing that a lot of financial institutions do, where they're like, register your voice as your password. And I've done a decent amount of testing on them, and it's secure. I mean, it's not as easy to bypass as you would think. This is a new AI that might be better at it, but like it's actually cryptographically pretty interesting, and it's not like as trivial as being like, hi, I'm John Strand. Like, there's a lot of like audio. There's a lot of audio engineering and other pieces that go into it. That being said, I think we should have Morgan Freeman record our Black Hills voicemail. So it's like, thank you.
You don't even need to have him record it. Just take some of his movies, like 3 seconds of him talking in a movie, and you guys can just.
So can he?
Well, that's
sue
what I
you
mean.
for
That's
his
what I'm saying.
voice
We use the
likeness?
AI. Yeah, it'll be perfect.
Or
My understanding.
wow, this is Arnold.
The soundboards of 2005 would like to have a word with you.
Right.
Yes.
Oh man. The 3-second sample, I think, is probably the piece of this article that's actually clickbait, because we've been doing phonetic speech systems for a long time. Like the voice from the computer from Star Trek is Gene Roddenberry's wife, and to make sure that they could continue to make the computer say whatever they wanted through the series, they had her record all the phonemes.
Right. Yep.
Things. So the 3 seconds they're talking about, to my understanding, is very specific. It's almost like the sneakers thing that Ryan mentioned. Like, my voice is my passport. Please authenticate me. You need to have a certain number of those phonemes to put it together.
But what movie was it where they were doing that? Where they were there was a movie where they were literally doing that, where they said, get them to say these words. And after they got them to say, what movie? Was it Sneakers?
It was Sneakers.
It was Sneakers.
I thought there was a more recent one where they were trying to do it as well. I thought it was like a Mission Impossible.
Well, Top Gun,
Impossible
Top Gun, the guys, one of the main actors doesn't have a voice anymore, but they like synthesized his voice. That might be what you're talking about. Val Kilmer. So anyway, it's scary. It's real. It's also, if you've used any of these, it's going to be easy for humans to detect if it's fake, probably, but only if you really know the person.
You know,
like you have to
a salesperson will fall for this, absolutely.
Yes, like you have to be, you have to like over the internet. You probably couldn't tell.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was an article that came out about a South African energy company, and they had gotten hit for like a phishing thing for like $200,000 or some fairly large sum of money. It might have been $1 million, and the reason that they transferred the money, and the big article was like, oh, this is this AI, it's a deep fake. It was deep fake is what they said. But in reality, when you started digging into it, there was no evidence of it being a deep fake. What it was there's this guy in South Africa, and the German holding company that holds it, somebody called in with a roughly German accent. It was like, yes, we need you to go through and we need you to transfer the money, like whatever. My German's horrible. But they were saying, they're like, well, I've never talked to the CEO before, but that guy did sound German, so click, and that was it. And that was the whole thing. So yeah, people are going to fall for it. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, but you don't need AI for that ruse.
No, exactly.
That was perfect.
Terrible. It doesn't matter. It's just got to
the AI, yeah. It's like the uncanny valley, though, where people are good at like that. If you're close to human, but you're not, you're actually very scary. So, like, I don't know.
It's also
I'm just waiting for pen testing firms to start hiring somebody like LeVar Jones in Police Academy. I just had to look up his name. Michael Winslow. Remember that
Winslow,
dude?
yeah.
He could like make any sound with his voice and be like, yeah, we don't need AI. We got this guy.
It's like a
Police Academy reference. So,
oh,
I want to go to another story though, real quick, from Motherboard. This one's about Russian hackers. You were talking about clickbait stories, Ian, just a little while ago, and this Russian hacker story is kind of. I don't like this story. I just want to cover that. Like, it basically says Russian hackers tried to break into the U.S.'s top nuclear lab, says a report. And we don't know if they got anything because there's no proof that they got in. We just know that they tried to get in, maybe.
They're trying.
And it's funny because one of it is like, Reuters was not able to determine why specifically the labs were targeted. We know why they were targeted, right?
Well, this was generated by AI. This is an AI written article.
generated story,
Yeah,
right?
because that's what they say in every news article.
It was actually Shodan, and they got the IP wrong. No.
Yeah, Monopixel just nailed it. Noah said, "Isn't this their job? Like this should the whole point of this article is like Russian hackers doing their job. Carry on. Like this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody."
Yeah.
Oh.
Should we make an article that corresponds to this and basically says defenders at the nuclear labs tried to defend against these attacks?
Yes, we should.
Like, is that
Also,
newsworthy now?
And then a pew.
More at 11.
What we need to do is we need to create the Infosec security onion.
There we go.
Like
all written by ChatGPT.
Is it like a bloomin' onion, like a deep fried?
We should call it the
it's
bloomin'
so many
onion.
calories.
I don't know, but like the onion, but for information security. Like, you know, hackers tried to hack today. It was Wednesday.
If we used bloomin' onion, we could use the word blue and then use it as a defensive security article too.
You're in marketing.
I like this idea, Wade. This is great.
So are we going to start a Black Hills news organization where we just make up fake news and say like defenders at Lawrence Livermore were very busy as they did their job?
We just have to reference the map.
There's about to be a new slash dot.
Hold on, zoom in on Idaho because isn't that where Lawrence is? Zoom in.
Yeah,
There's nothing happening in Idaho.
Whoa.
Well, now
Oh
you moved
wait,
to Canada.
I saw something. Wait, where's John's house? Oh, there it is.
Nope, I'm in the U and the N right there above
in
the
the
N.
U.
That's my house.
That
right
one
there.
right there.
Good
Right
job.
there.
On
Hey,
your bandwidth.
don't rub it like that. You're just gonna make it excited. Don't do that.
Yeah,
how
if you
you
touch
get
the threat map a
map
lot, you
done.
actually release a 0 day.
That's how you
Yeah.
get a DDoS.
I'm hacking other places and I'm hacking space. Apparently, I
Oh
don't
my
know.
god.
Oh,
Where's
my
the Bermuda
goodness.
Triangle? Why doesn't the Bermuda?
This-
Like, I feel like it should play into this.
This
You
is
know
how
what
the
I love?
Aurora Borealis is made, right?
So like an
it's all the
Infosec
hacking.
Onion article would have something like this, and it says security analyst gets promoted strictly by sharing out a pew pew map in real time.
You know that's happened too. You know that's happened.
Okay, we need to move on. Let's try to go to another. Does anybody else have a story? I mean, we could talk about the widespread logic.
Well, so we should
control.
follow up. We should follow up on CircleCI probably
Yeah.
because we
Let's
we
go
like
ahead.
follow.
Take it. Take CircleCI.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
Ralph's thing for sure.
We got some more info, and it's gonna shock you. Does anyone want to just like randomly predict
Take
what?
a guess.
Wade, let's put Wade on the spot.
It was worse than we
Wade,
thought it was.
You put me on the
Wade,
spot. I
yeah,
haven't
we're
been
putting-
here for 2
okay.
weeks. I don't even
No.
know what this is about.
Okay, well, it's fine. It's fine. You're
It's an intervention,
smart. You're a smart person without a mustache anymore. But so basically, let's say you're a CI developer management platform. Okay, you got popped. How did you get popped? Just take a crack at it.
My salesperson got fished.
No, but
No,
close.
no.
Who else
Really
would be
close,
targeted?
Who else is the really people you should worry about?
Okay,
in your
the
organization?
CEO, right? One of
No,
the
no, someone with a lot of permissions.
Lots
the
of
excessive
sysadmins,
permissions.
the help desk.
No, the
Sysadmin.
developers.
The developers are the worst. Yeah.
Developers,
developers.
developers,
You may feel like
developers.
you're getting picked on, Wade, but I thought you did a good job.
You did
Thank
a good
you.
job.
You nailed it.
All
You
of your
went straight.
options were good options.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
It's not,
so
it's
Ralph,
not like I
what
do this
act-
for a living.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're good at this. We should make an article about you. So what actually
Bloomin'
happened?
Onion, here we
Ralph?
go.
What happened?
Oh, yeah. So the what do you call it? The developer got phished. We're not exactly sure how he got phished. It doesn't really matter. They compromised his host. They used his session tokens so that they could bypass two-factor and kind of exfilled everything after that, right? So once they got into their account, they also extracted some, I guess, our CircleCI said that their data was encrypted at rest, but they extracted encryption keys from the host. It's kind of like once you're on the host, game's over, right? If you don't detect or figure out that, this attack is going on, game's over. And,
The engineer could generate
yes.
keys. The
And he could
engineer
make
had
keys.
permission.
He had a lot of access. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So
this comes down to and I don't know if anyone has a hot take on this, but how do you limit the permissions of your engineers? Is it a whole prod, dev, staging, QA environment thing? Is it just a general permissions management thing? Because I will say, like, you do have to have someone who can break and fix all the things, right? Or do you not?
Separation of duties, right? That's the biggest part. You have to lay down that baseline for each one of them to understand what each one of them is doing. And then if you're into detection, trying to build detections around that, because I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody uses one of those dev tools, we would never know, like, if it was for malicious cause. And then, of course, like you said, like just having a checks and balances that no one can push, no one can pull without OKs to and from stuff. So that would be my first thought on how to defend against it. And then, of course, building alerts to then look for anything being pulled out or exfiltrated in mass, because I'm sure, guarantee you they pulled everything out in mass and not one byte at a time. It rarely happens.
Yeah, so that's a lot of really good info. And I feel like the other thing that maybe was a opportunity here is, like, you have this sort of single point of failure for your encryption at rest, which is like, that's your like break glass in case of breach savior, right? So I feel like maybe building some alerting around specifically that API or whatever's being used to manage the access keys for your at rest encryption, like that could be useful. The other thing that came to mind, and I've encountered this on testing, is anomaly detection within sessions. So like effectively detecting session replays of, like, if I go on your computer and I steal your browser, there's, unless I'm originating from your actual browser context, having like an additional detection for, the browser context has switched, which obviously we don't know what they did. They could have been using his actual browser context, but if I take
really
your
hard.
session cookie and I plug it into like a Russian IP, it should trigger many alerts, right?
So what I've seen though is usually what happens is they'll take those session cookies and then do, SOX proxy, and then just run through your computer. So then you would not be able to tell.
No,
And
you
then,
can.
It makes it much more hard for that detection, right? And then most of the time they'll just use the same browser as well. So then even detecting a different browser, sometimes like host name or something like that will get leaked. But
it should be fingerprinted, the session, right? Like the session itself should be fingerprinted uniquely.
This browser proxying thing, I think initially it was discovered by Dan Kaminsky, where you could do arbitrary forwarding to any port. The browser has basically fixed that issue to make it so your browser can only proxy to known web ports. But as far as like proxying through someone's existing browser session, that's been in the browser exploitation framework from Wade Alcorn for, I want to say, a decade now. Or is this something else?
No, you're right. It is.
That.
We're speculating. We don't know what it actually is. That toolkit is present. However, there are companies like Okta or other that try to do session fingerprinting and detect those kinds of proxying attacks. It's difficult.
The other piece of this too is that obviously we're talking about on the same host, right? And we're like how hard that might be to, if you're using their browser and so on and so forth, right? But also implementing, conditional access on the host so that they can't do anything outside. I know that Corey brought up detection, but you shouldn't even be able to attempt to connect to one of these services without already being, going through a conditional access control that like actually, bring on board the device to even be able to connect to that, website, right? Regardless of session, right?
Guys, these are all wonderful technical solutions, but you're failing to recognize a very core and critical issues. Developers do not like to be chained in. Speaking as a former developer, I mean, people who they're in the development and they get really pissy when you wind up taking away their admin privileges, limiting them in any way. We went through this over and over again in multiple companies that I was with. Getting any type of admin access, they need to understand the risk, not just that it makes their lives easier. And that's something that all of our training, all of our preparation for developers who are learning how to code, they never get that.
Well, and honestly, when I was doing expert decision support with IANS, one of the big things that we always recommended was treat your developers like they have the plague. Like your developers, these types of people that need that level of access, and it's almost impossible to completely restrict it and get work done, is the best thing you can do is literally just put them in their own separate segmented network that does not have access to the rest of the corporate network. They access their email through webmail. They're completely on their own. and try to set it up that way. Is ultimately
And
what
Eric
most
just
organizations
nailed it.
did.
Full rights
What?
in dev, full rights in dev, not in
not
production.
production.
Just not production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even
And-
that, by the way, I want to make it clear that everything I just described is still crappy, right? Because if your sensitive stuff is your intellectual property that you're developing, you're basically washing your hands and saying, we can't protect that. Yeah. So it is, I think Eric just said, there's seldom a technological solution to a behavioral problem. And I don't even think it's a behavioral problem. It's just when information security runs up against what the business needs to do to write checks, then at that point, something's going to give, and it's going to be security almost every single time. So you do the best you can, right?
So one of the things I want to add in on this, because Braun mentioned as a developer, I just came from working with secure pipelines, right? And I think a lot of modern development process has solved for this a little bit, in that everything I teach my students is about collusion. I want to force the bad guys, the bad people, to collude. And the way I teach it in class is I always say, it's very difficult to walk up to someone and say, hey, want to commit crimes together? Like that, it doesn't work like that. So when you go through and you build a modern pipeline that says, hey, I'm going to have the ability to push code in, but it's going to go through all these checks, and then there's going to be an approver, and there's going to be someone who merges it, and it goes this way, but never this way. You generally have much better outcomes. You take what people have mentioned in chat. You say you can have access to dev, you can push into prod, but you're going to go through all of these mechanisms and these approvals, and someone's going to hopefully get an eye on it. Now, is that perfect? Absolutely not. But if you at least set up those tools and mechanisms, I've found that developers don't mind being, quote, chained down as much if a lot of their work ends up getting automated through the pipeline. So I would be really interested to see how CircleCI actually manages their pipeline, their secrets. And then the last point I would make is their data. You can give developers full access in development, but if you do not have an appropriate sanitized data set, then it doesn't matter if they steal the data from production. They can just steal it from development. You've just got two repositories of risk there. So sanitize the data, have a data set that developers can work from, an appropriate pipeline, and force people to collude when they want to do bad things. Generally, you solve those issues, or at least you get close.
I love how Ian literally just described how to recruit people to Black Hills Information Security. So do you want to go commit crimes together?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you have passed.
So speaking of developers, there's a pretty funny article that's like it
this
almost
one's
reads
clickbait.
it's almost like an urban legend. It's like how a single developer dropped AWS costs by 90% and then disappeared.
This one's pretty good. This one's pretty good.
This
Like,
is like the equivalent of like a heist movie. It's like the nerdiest heist movie.
no, this is a secret on how to actually save 90% on your bill. You just have to click passed into the article,
So yeah, okay, so basically the article, it's on Medium, and this is unverified. Like
Yes.
Of course, it leads with, for NDA reasons, I can't tell the name or the industry. But yeah, basically,
I love the picture, by the way.
Yeah, right. So the story, and I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. So a freelance developer contacted the company and said, "Hey," opened up his trench coat and said, "I can save your cloud bill.
I got a Google Chrome extension for you.
I can cut 90% off your AWS bill." That was the pitch.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's obviously sounds too good to be true. And basically, here's the other thing. Here's the ultimatum. In this briefcase, I will take a single $50,000 paycheck if I succeed,
Yes,
or zero if I don't. So
this
it's
is how you know this is a scam.
Well, okay, so this is the equivalent of like if you're setting up a contest. It's you set the rules very clearly. So like if I just delete all your assets, doesn't that save you 90% anyway?
Yeah.
So it was a cheap bet. Obviously, of course, it's like, well, I lose nothing. Every business person's going to take that, right? Like, oh, you mean there's a free trial? I'm in. So basically, no commits were done anywhere. except the Chrome extension.
Yes, so in the article they were using a Chrome extension to do some of their like processing in the cloud to do some AI stuff, and I guess the cost was about $100,000 a month, right? Just in that, and the Chrome extension was the only thing that was kind of like user interaction, right? So like instead of just like it did require some user interaction to start the data process, right? And so they changed the Chrome extension, right?
So the engineer, the anonymous masked engineer, figured out where the majority of the cost center was, and then committed a bunch of code into it. That code contained a nice little file called accounts.yaml, which what did this account have? Oh, it's 1,000,000 Google accounts.
Yes. They stole Google accounts.
Well, or created, right?
Created.
So I think it's created
under like trials.
These are all,
so it's like
just
GCP.
Up tons of demo accounts and
yes,
the
using
workload?
a million demo accounts to save on the bill, right?
So basically, it's like, yeah, I've saved you 90% of your cost by moving all your data processing to trial Google accounts. So here's the thing. So basically, there's kind of a business miscommunication here where like the IT guy who was paying the bill was like, well, I guess you did it. And no one checked the code.
No one thought.
No one asked why.
So they paid him out because they're like, yeah, you're right. I just got the bill. Wow. Good job. 10 out of 10.
Man.
5 stars.
5 stars.
Yeah, but keep reading, because after a while,
right? So
the happy IT director wanted to give more assignments to this genius.
He's like, what else can we trial? Can we have all of our clients be trial accounts too? Which is Twitter? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so so it dies, right? Like Bronwyn said. Spoiler alert, Google's like, hold on, why are we loading up $90,000 in processing fees for some random company on trial accounts with 1 million trial accounts?
Yes.
So basically, whether this was an API abuse, this is going to get patched by Google because it's literally money just flying out the door, right? Yeah. And they eventually, put in the fraud detections and figured out all the fake accounts. And then guess what? The workload got moved back to AWS because that's how it had to
in
go.
a weird way, though, he did save them some money for a little while. Probably more than the $50,000 they paid. Just saying.
I guess Google would have to go after them and be like, hey, you can't use 1 million trial accounts.
But I can't help but think that there's an IT manager that's reading this article and is bringing it up in his next meeting with his developers. And they're like, this guy clearly did this. How are we going to do this? And they're like, sir, that's illegal. But still, he did it. How would we actually go about doing it? It's illegal.
Is it in the budget? Is it in the budget?
Is it in the budget?
There is one way. The funny thing.
Service violation.
Would you like to come commit crimes with me? Yes.
Okay. So exactly, I like that's like the official title of the episode is "Would you like to come commit crimes with me?" But yeah, that's basically the IT directive for 2023: commit crimes, save 90%.
Yes, that's how you lower IT costs. You steal.
I'm available as a CISO. Just hit me up. I got great advice.
Okay,
here we go.
Now, I have to ask
What's up?
for the other gray hairs in the audience. Am I the only one that when I read this article, I thought, gee, this is like the new variation on phone freaking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like hopping through PBXs?
No, she's talking about just like stealing free, minutes.
Oh,
getting free calls, right? Like using trials, like whatever.
People are like diving to Google things, Wikipedia pages from the 80s.
Yeah,
I mean, it's different. It's different in implementation, but similar in spirit, which is the big companies have infinite resources. Let's take advantage of their infinite resources and somehow also profit at the same time.
Well, yeah, and they can do it.
I wonder if the old freakers are voice over IP engineers now.
Yeah.
No, they're GCP engineers.
GCP. That's how they get that free sweet compute time.
They actually, they can reduce your cloud costs by 90% if you're wondering.
Yes.
I think
for a month at least.
That John made about there's some IT manager somewhere.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that is so true because I've been at not just small companies.
You've been in those meetings.
But I have been in those meetings. I've 100% been in those meetings with the CTO going, yeah, but what if we just kept using the trial of the software and just did a snapshot once a month and redid it?
No.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, technically that would work. It would be illegal and would be against the terms of service in the contract and the end user license agreement, ethics. I mean, pick your poison.
Ethics? Get out of here. You're fired.
Man, like the serious example, and I think we had something that came up in the show that was similar, where like you remember eval licenses, where people like there were companies. I remember literally that they had interns that would go through and reset their servers. So they would basically be able to use the trial licenses for Microsoft Windows further into the future. And if you go back to Bashir and Nanzance in Iran, like people were taking pictures and they were running eval versions of Windows XP, which leads me into Stuxnet in the next article that I want to talk about. But no, like it's seriously, for a long time, companies were constantly like, is it possible for you to go on LimeWire and find a cracked version of this enterprise software?
God, it was like almost
that happened all the freaking time.
So my recent OSINT passion has led me to this conclusion, which is the fastest and most effective way to get compromised is to go after pirated software.
Yes,
like the number of seriously, if you think that you can download pirated software without getting a virus, go walk through a minefield. Seriously, it is that bad. Like it will not happen.
So years and years ago, like when I first started pen testing on my own, which would have been like 2006, I wrote a little program where you could basically look at all the file sharing services and you could see who was sharing files from what IP address ranges. You could correlate that back to your customer's IP range for egress, and you could literally see what files the computer systems on the inside of that network were sharing. It was only one test, but I was able to get access to every single file on one computer, and that was pretty flippin' sweet the one time it worked.
Then you just got to make a song called WeirdAlYankovic.mp3.exe, and they would definitely download it, and then you have a shell. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing that's really funny in the comment in chat, this is what we call a loophole. Yeah, the problem is when the provider fixes the glitch. You're like, oh,
they're so done.
Yeah.
There's a million trial accounts. That's one line of code. Goodbye. Your business operations have ground to a halt.
And this is how Twitter's API went down.
And I'm giving AOL vibes right now. AOL.
I want to, folks, let's move on. I want to talk about the Siemens story, though, just to keep moving. Otherwise, we get stuck on stories. It's a Wired article. Widespread logic control of Flaw raises the specter of Stuxnet.
The gift.
So this story kind of pisses me off. So they start out by talking about Stuxnet and how bad it was. And literally the only correlation between these two is they both impacted PLCs. But even that analogy breaks down because Stuxnet didn't infect the PLC. It infected the computer system that was controlling the PLC, which seems like a distinction without a difference. But with Stuxnet, you could spread it through normal file shares, link abuse. I can't remember, keyboard layout vulnerabilities. It could spread through Windows computer systems is basically what Stuxnet did. It had 4 separate 0 days. This particular story, and what kind of makes me frustrated about this story, is this security research company, Red Balloon, found a vulnerability in the way that the Siemens logic controller, what is it, S7-1500 PLCs, deals with crypto. So you could basically install malware on it, which once again, totally sounds horrible, but it requires physical access to the device for you to be able to launch this attack. Now, I really, truly, completely understand that these things are embedded. They're everywhere on air-gapped networks. But the threat profile is literally you have to gain access to the physical PLC itself to do this type of attack. And there's part of me, it's just like, this is a little bit overboard from clickbait. Like Siemens isn't even going to fix it. They're going to update the way that they do their code going forward. Yeah. But I'm going to throw this out there. Like if you're new to the industry and you're reading something, it's like requires physical access to a device. The moral of the story in computer security is if I have physical access to your devices, you are screwed. It doesn't matter how, doesn't matter what the actual machinations of it are, you're hosed. So I don't see how this increases the risk profile much greater than if somebody had normal physical access to the device. So I'd like to get you all's opinion on it, but reading it, it was just one of those things where I read it, they're talking about Stuxnet. I'm like, well, this sounds horrible. And then I get further down and it's like, no, you have to have physical access to the device to be able to make this work.
Did they have firmware on this PLC?
So this actually...
No, I said no. I literally was reading what Eric just said, and this is true. Physical access is root access.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so this, I think this actually sets the record, if you read between the lines, for the most expensive pen test of all time. Like, it says they took a year to write a protocol to figure out how to talk to the PLC. A year? It took a year to... Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not a great programmer. It would take me more than a year. But like this, like, I guess what I would say is, if it takes
the best man on it.
If it takes, I don't know what Red Balloon Security is. Never heard of it. I don't know what the name means. But like a year. If you give me anything on the planet in a year of time, the chances that I find a vulnerability are incredibly high. Like a year, that's sort of ridiculous amount of time. So like, I guess what I would say is I'm with John on this one. Like this is a headline generator because it's everyone's, favorite article about PLCs are vulnerable,
I think John hit the nail on the head with like physical access though, right? Like
what's that, Wade?
Can you hear me? Am I low? I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I remember working at a data center, and I think I'm like going back on my Linux. I can't remember booting into single user mode and then just rewriting the password and going in. Like your root. Yeah. Once I learned that, I'm like, oh, once you have physical access to anything, you actually have absolute access. It doesn't matter anymore.
I mean, that's
one thing a lot of people don't know about.
There are threat models that incorporate physical access, and the use cases are mainly IoT devices. Like, if you shouldn't be able to get physical access to an iPhone and compromise the entire thing. Like that is literally, Apple spends billions of dollars making sure that isn't the case. And yes, there are vulnerabilities in that, but sometimes you do build physical access into your threat profile. I think if you're building PLCs, what is the threat model that has PLCs exposed to the public? Like physical access to PLCs is public. I mean, there are like kiosks and stuff, but like I'd like to remind everyone that like PLCs are attached to RTUs, which are just Windows. Like John said, they're plugged into something that has a USB port. So why spend a year reverse engineering the firmware?
Yeah, what John was saying is they went after the computer in Stuxnet.
Right. Yeah, like that's still true. It's not like they
still
stopped.
True today. And you're right. Like. And what are you going to do? Like, you're going to replace every firmware on like every PLC inside? You're like, hey, we're going to do it tonight, guys.
They're not even releasing an update for it. Like, Siemens
you have to
they're like, nope, not fixing that.
Well, you have to replace all your PLCs, so you use non-made in China PLCs anyway.
Oh, yeah. That's actually all right. What I'm trying to do today. I'm from the non-China PLC.
I really want to give some props to Red Balloon. Okay, so if I was rewriting this, okay, and like they were doing a press release, and I was in charge of trying to like release this to the public, they wrote something that reverse engineers this PLC code. That's badass. Like that's really freaking cool, right? That should be something that they should release, possibly some parts of it open source, and that does great marketing for your company, right? It shows that your company has this ability to reverse engineer this code. You have written tools, you're releasing to the public. Good for you. You're going to get lots of work. But if your goal was to release an exploit to showcase that, and you're basically like, if someone gets physical access to this box, they can do bad things, you haven't moved the needle. So I'm going to give them props because I'm sure that there's amazing work that went into this, and my hat's off to them from a technical perspective. And I would strongly encourage anybody that's looking for PLC security assessments, go talk to them because that shows badass skills. But this story is just, for me, it's a non-story because once again, physical access means root access every single time.
But what about
and that's going to be an expensive test for a year of reverse engineering.
I want more of those tests, right? Like, you want to give you a year to break into something. Can you do it? Yeah. Sure. Like,
I have a question and I have a statement. So this S7 1500 PLCs, I haven't done any research into them. The only place where I might even raise a caveat to what you said, John, is how are these S7 1500 PLCs being marketed? Are they being marketed as a device that you can put in a in a facility or an area that doesn't have additional security, like you could have it in some other, you know, pump station or something like that that doesn't necessarily have all the additional security to stop someone from getting in?
No.
Or trying to be
The
somewhere
answer
else?
is no.
No.
Here,
Like,
I'm gonna share
so
a picture of this with you. I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
looking on
share
eBay right
share.
now.
So what
And I'm
John's
gonna
going to
show
show,
you-
yeah,
Now,
the
just
PLC
looking at
itself.
this, right here.
It has a
this
touch
going to
screen. That's yeah.
Is this something you want exposed to the general public? Just
have
looking
to
at it.
Do you have to do,
No.
do you have to do a code to get in? It's up, up, down, down,
If you
left, left,
if you
right.
press down, that turns off the centrifuge.
Exactly. Well, if you do select start, it starts.
Yeah.
So just looking at it, the fact that there's a screen and buttons on it, yeah, you're not going to put it in the main lobby of a McDonald's.
Also, I'd like one thing to keep in mind about PLCs is it all maps probably on some level to voltage, and voltage is a wire that comes out of something that you can do things with. Like if the PLC closes the circuit, there's other ways to close the circuit that don't involve going through the PLC. Or if the PLC, you know, if it's using Modbus or whatever it is, you can just tap into that wire and do whatever you want to do. And you don't like if with physical access, you know, anyway.
So,
and then, wait,
so once again, I'm feeling nostalgic. So an example would be if you had something like, let's say, a cash like machine, like an ATM. Years ago, I was on an assessment, and the people I was working with showed me an ATM machine that they were testing, and you could adjust the voltage. They got the little box that you could plug in, and you could adjust the voltage, and you could make it go down to where it's browning out, which would cause the ATM machine to flicker on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off very, very, very quickly. And in doing that, you literally could put the ATM machine into a diagnostic mode. After it saw itself boot on and off multiple times, it's like something's really bad. I'm going to go straight into diagnostic mode. And there was literally functions where you could say purge cache from machine, kind of like see load letter. It would be like dollar bills are stuck up in there, just eject them. So, you know, once again, the threat model matters, right? So if we were talking about this firmware attack and it was something that was in cache machines, yes, this would be a really big deal, right? But once again, I don't think that these S7 1500s are something you're going to put out in the open like a cache machine.
Yeah, and having done a bunch of tests, like I've done a bunch of retail tests, I've never delivered a report to a client. Like I did a bunch of self-checkout machines, price checkers, kiosks, check-in, all that kind of stuff. We've never told a client, like, just every client we give findings to, they're like, yeah, this thing's going to be babysat, whether it's security cameras, a physical person there that's babysitting these devices. Like no one is like planning a threat model around like, oh yeah, our self-checkout machines, they're just like accessible to the general public with no monitoring, no that's never going to, because people, it's not even about security. People are just going to start stealing the thing. Like it's like people, it's going to be, oh, this is a computer. this is mine. Like, so yeah.
Did you guys hear about the McDonald's hack on the self-checkout where they figured out that you could like buy like a bunch of cheeseburgers for no money? If you went
Isn't that the whole business model of McDonald's to buy a bunch of cheeseburgers?
Yes, but for even cheaper. All right, so that's if you have physical access. Once again, the guy figured out if you like take away the bun, add a meat patty, take away a bun, add a meat patty, it subtracts more money, and then you actually get stuff for free.
Why?
Did he actually bring back the McRib again?
He brought the McRib back.
There's a secret
Szechuan sauce, Morty. Bring back the Szechuan sauce, Morty.
I do want to make one statement before we move on to the next story, because if you heard any of this ICS stuff and you said, those people, I want to argue with them face to face, well, you should come out to S4 in Miami the 12th through the 14th, where myself and Deb and the fine people at Dragos will be demoing the new ICS card deck. And if you want to talk to us about backdoors and breaches and say your hot takes on PLCs are wrong, bald man, I'll be there. And
wait. Is this one of those decks?
That's one of those decks.
I turned my autofocus off.
Yeah, we call it teal.
It doesn't look as good because I don't have a mustache, but you know, it still looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Top Gun was so in.
It was great.
All right. So somebody pick the final story.
Yeah. So can we talk about the biggest data broker in the world getting upset at other data brokers?
Let's do that.
Oh,
Let's do that.
yes.
Meta sues.
This is relevant to my interests. That
Hot
is such a
calling
good way to
kettle
introduce
black
this article.
as a service.
Oh,
Okay, so
God.
Ralph, explain what you're. That was the best intro, but what is this actually?
So
beautiful.
Facebook or Meta, because they had to rebrand because of bad, stuff. Anyways, they're upset. Here's the general gist: they're upset that other companies are scraping data off their data scraping service and then selling it to other people as scraped data. So yeah, that's the general gist of what's going on here.
So
I love this.
I'm not
I
a
love this
lawyer,
story so much.
but this has gone to court many times and no one's ever won. Right? Like LinkedIn did the same thing. LinkedIn said,
and
because
they
by
lost.
the way, like the whole cottage industry, like Zoom Info, Leads, all these like lead sites, all they do is just scrape. That's all they do.
That's how
They're
they
not
get it.
like calling business and being like, "What? Give us your Rolodex and we'll send you a gift basket." Like, no, they're just scraping. So like, this has gone to court many times. No one's ever managed to win. So I guess I'm just like, why take it to court? I'm very surprised.
Let me kind of clarify the difference in these, right? So how can I put this? If you, as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, if you are scraping data from a website utilizing the same fields as a normal human being with a browser would use, you're probably okay, right? You're clearly violating the terms of service, but it's going to be really hard for them to like get that in court where the court gives them money, right? From compensatory damages. If you are finding exposed APIs that are not the same APIs that a normal human would use, i.e. like a browser port, but you're finding some weird S3 way of doing the scrape, then you are very much in trouble at that point. So the Capital One case, this was like the core of the defense for the Capital One case, is they were basically saying she was just scraping the data from the website the way a normal person would be able to do that. And that was total BS because a normal human being would never have the ability to actually pull that out with a standard browser. So there is a difference. But the thing that you mentioned, like LinkedIn on this one, it sounds to me like they're using standard web protocols that every user can use everywhere. And it's very hard to prove that legally that you're actually causing damages.
Yes.
And
Well,
Totally.
If you look at the description of the lawsuit, one of the things that is telling is they say Meta is making the claim that Voyager developed and used proprietary software, and in addition, they used a diverse set of computers and networks in different countries. So
they have 350,000 users.
Yeah, but it's not just the scraping of data, it's also the deliberate attempt to hide their activity and to do it in a manner that involves subterfuge.
But here's the
is
deal:
that
as
illegal,
far as the
though?
courts are concerned, like your terms of service don't mean garbage to the courts.
There's
right?
no law that says you can't look in someone's shoulder.
Right?
Here's the other thing.
So that's
In
number
the
one.
US,
Number two, but the other thing that they say, and this is how the courts have got to look at this, is how can you differentiate this from a normal user accessing that data? Now, if a normal user can access that data one click at a time, it's very difficult for the courts to say, well, clicking on it one at a time, that's legal. Doing it in an automated way, well, that's where the line is drawn and you can't do that. Courts don't like to make that distinction, like at all. So if you're going through a normal web protocol, like a normal web user would, and you can access that data through a few simple clicks, and you do that in court, courts really, really, really don't look at that as much of a distinction, whether you're doing it in an automated fashion or you're doing it as a human being. And there's a number of reasons for that, but whether you like it or not, that's seriously the way that courts look at it is, what are they doing? Now, if they were, once again, if they're accessing APIs, they're abusing vulnerabilities and they're doing it, horse of a completely different color.
Here's the deal.
The normal way that a human would, you're probably going to get away with it.
But all they need is one precedent. All they need to do is establish.
And they've been trying for years.
So yes, that is probably the play, right? Because I will say, like, I do understand on a core level, like the hypocrisy that Ralph pointed out is essentially the world's largest data broker, or one of the world's largest data brokers, aka Facebook, where you can go and say, I would like to purchase an ad which will contain malware possibly, which I'd like to target it to a 22-year-old female living in Uzbekistan who likes, milkshakes. And they're like, no problem. This matches 1,000 people. Here's all their names and phone numbers. Oops, sorry. Did we tell you the phone numbers? That was an accident.
Does anyone remember, though, in 2018 when Facebook users were being years of phone data, metadata was being collected from Facebook off of Android phones? Not in the terms of service, but Facebook was doing that. It's the hypocrisy of the whole thing. That's what kills me.
Yeah, and they're willing to sell you it. If you want to buy an ad, the data is all yours. If you want to just make your own business model based on their business model, not cool.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see the biggest thing that, and Bronwyn brought this up too, so manipulation of the users that they're trying to target. Like, because I have a lot of personal firsthand experience scraping Facebook, but totally not for legal purposes, just speculation.
But clearly all done under the ruse of total authorization from our customers.
Yeah, so basically, like the thing that'll be interesting to see in court is, like, if they did try to manipulate people into approving friend requests or like impersonate their friends or something like that. Like if you have a private profile, if it's all public, they're probably not going to get canned. But if it's private, I could see it. Like if it's like I had a completely private profile and someone made an account that like looks like my mom and like friend requested me, now it's getting into like, well, you're impersonating US citizens or you're impersonating, that's where I could see the line being drawn. But like if it's all public and it's like, oh, well, the other thing is if you have your profile information on the public, I mean, isn't that what public means? Like I whatever.
Could this just be Facebook like punishing Voyager Labs and just being like, hey, you're going to spend a shit ton of legal fees?
Because
that's all I thought this was.
It's a parasite.
It's bopping them on the head. We can spend all this legal fees. You can't.
Totally.
Maybe you'll go under.
I'm hoping what this company does. What I'm hoping this company does is go bankrupt and just start up a new company with a different name and call it like Data or something.
Yeah,
this is the WWE of scraping.
The WWE is scraping.
The best case scenario is they release all the files.
Voyager Labs.
Oops,
I
gotta get out of here, guys. I got a phone call I've been waiting on. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Make sure you know who it is before you answer.
Linux, everybody.
Yeah.
Watch for voice spoofing.
Yeah, if it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's like, I'm the biggest scraper in town. Yeah.
Show me how big you are. Can I have your data set? Give me your data set. Just send it over.
How many petabytes is it?
Yeah, it's got to be petabytes. But yeah, I think that's I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it. Unless anyone else has any comments, we'll follow along. Hopefully, some real lawyers on YouTube talk about what's actually going to happen, because this has come in court many times and it's never worked for the company that's suing. But we'll see.
It is funny. They do make a lot of accounts just to hide themselves, but they're like, you can't do that. You can't make too many accounts. That you must be
300,000 sock puppets. Like I can only imagine how much of a nightmare. And I can tell you, like on Facebook, there's actually like a lot of mechanisms in place to detect this kind of activity. Exactly. Like they actually, because this is their monetization model, they actually put a lot of resources into detecting this kind of stuff, detecting like scraping, that kind of stuff. So it is like this company was doing some weird stuff. So,
alrighty.
All right. I feel like that's as good a place as any to call it. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks all the viewers. I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a good day, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
See you guys then.
Later.